Hey, everybody, and welcome to part two of our three-part series on the power of mindset. Thanks for joining us again. And if it's your first time, thanks for being here. My name is Brett, and the other beautiful face you see on the screen is Chris McAllister. What's up, Chris?
Good to see you, Brett. And for anybody that doesn't know, I got to tell everybody it's Brett's birthday today. Happy
Woo!
birthday, Brett.
Couldn't think of a better way to spend it than jamming with you and talking about mindset. It's the thing that has been capturing my attention since we first started working together back in 2011, and especially these last few months as we're preparing to launch a new resource to help a bunch of people with developing mindset. More on that in part three of the webinar series. But excited today. For those of you who don't know, Chris and I are the co-founders of ChampionShift, which exists to serve athletes and coaches and really ambitious people alike in developing their mindset to remove distractions, relax under pressure, and engage in competition and pursuits with joy and purpose, and experience their best selves in that. So we've developed some resources to help you do that. And today, second part of our webinar series, we're going to be talking about current trends in mindset development. If you missed the first part, it'll be available through a replay link that we can get to you, where we talked about the power of the mind and how tapping into your mind as part of your development, not just your skills, not just your tactics, not just working harder, but how the mind plays a huge role in your performance in competition, athletics, and just in daily life, interacting with your family and with coworkers. And so we talked about that in part one. But part two, we want to talk about current trends that we're seeing in mindset development. I know for us, this is super exciting because training the mind and the mental part of athletics, but also just in human development, is starting to gain more and more traction in mainstream. And so super exciting for us to be in this space as more and more people are catching on to the value of it. And I want to hit on three trends today, Chris, that are kind of, when you think about mindset or mental skills development, that come up a lot. And I affectionately refer to them as drugs, counseling, and yoga pants. And I don't say it in complete jest because each of them has a place and a value, and can be helpful for people, no matter where they're at. And so what I'd like to do today is talk through each of those three resources that people are moving towards, what value they bring, but really how they supplement what we teach with ChampionShift, and how we take it maybe a step further to help you in your daily application. I guess we'll just work through them in reverse order that I said them, but I think the idea of mindfulness, meditation is gaining a lot of steam in mainstream. What you probably didn't see even 5 years ago with your HR department has probably hosted some kind of mindfulness seminar, or we've seen it in schools doing it for kids to improve attention spans and retention of information, leading them through mindfulness training. And athletes in my world, where I've worked in the NBA for 10 years, are using yoga as a performance hack, not just for the physical benefits of the stretching and some of the strength and balance exercises, but for the mindfulness part of it, adding breathing exercises into it. I've worked with players. I remember one player when I was working with the Phoenix Suns who, every city we traveled to, the first thing we would do is go to a yoga studio, and we do yoga and then go have dinner that night. And it just became a part of our travel routine. So Chris, I'd like to hear, just your experience with ideas of mindfulness and maybe different meditation practices, and what's happening within each of those, and what are they trying to accomplish with those things?
Yeah. I have to ask this though. Did it ever get annoying that he wanted to do yoga in every city, or did you just enjoy it?
No, I actually got into it for a little bit. It's one of those things where you're trying to build a relationship with the player, and take interest in what he's taking interest in off the court, so you can help him on the court. And so I did it. The one thing is he always bought us like protein smoothies afterwards, and I love a good smoothie, so it was worth the trip.
I'm picturing him being like, I don't know if you've seen those YouTube videos of the guy with like the long hair who debunks everything by like making fun of it, like he's passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so one of them though he has on being gluten free, and he goes, and like one of my kids is gluten free, so but he goes, yeah, I'm gluten free so I can annoy everyone wherever I am. So when you talk about he has to do yoga in every city, I'm picturing, that kind of vibe. And I love jamming on this stuff with you because, when we started this, focus of bringing what it means to really transform yourself to athletes and coaches and teams, it was so interesting to me to see on my end of things, like businesses we worked with, how interested they were in the athletic stories. I was at a cafe here in Columbus. And so for those of you who don't know, Brett's in Arizona, I'm in Columbus, Ohio. What a wild thing that 9 years ago we connected. Now we've got these books together. And so for Brett, a lot of his experience being in athletics and in the NBA, mine has been with leaders and businesses. But it's been so interesting to see their interest in that. So I'm at a cafe in Columbus, Ohio, and I was meeting with a guy for leadership and business stuff with SiteShift. And he had a person sitting there for the meeting that just didn't speak up much. And I talked to both of them, but he just wasn't saying much. And so they both get up and leave. And the guy that wasn't saying much, I just have to say, was like crazy tall. I'm 6'1" and felt like, just dwarfed by his presence.
Yeah.
And so the next business I was meeting was at this cafe came in, and I had told him about what we were doing, and this was a few years ago when we were finally like getting a website, right? And just taking some steps. And he goes, man, ChampionShift must be going awesome. And I'm like, yeah, why? And he goes, dude, and he named some NBA player that had been in the room that I had been meeting with, and I had no idea. Since then, we've connected and at least become somewhat friends. But so I think the business world is so interested in this because they understand that sustaining elite levels of performance, world-class performers are dedicated to that pursuit, whatever field they're in. And you start talking about mindfulness and meditation. And it is interesting to me to see the last, 4 or 5 years, how passionately obsessed some people have become with mindfulness and meditation. And they're great. They're great tools to get you started on the pathway of training your mind as much as you can. They're very, very helpful. And I'm using my words intentionally to get you started on the pathway. I think the danger becomes when we see them as endpoints. And there's a ton I could say about all that. Would you want me to go more into like the danger of it being an endpoint, or kind of where at least companies are doing some entry level stuff with it?
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear, more about how it's being used now. And I guess what are the benefits? Like what are people getting from it as a starting point?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, first and foremost, just with mindfulness, that like you're more than the emotion that you're having. You're more than your current emotional state. And that's just acknowledging this reality that life has become more and more stressful for people. Technology hasn't allowed more leisure time. It's actually sucked away the leisure time. So you got your phone and your email, and it's coming at you in every part of your life. You're staying longer at the office. Your commute is longer. The demands of raising children and, raising a family have become more comprehensive. Your kids need to be 72 places for their sports activities. So smart leaders, smart employers have just recognized that when they're showing up emotionally already frazzled, filled, they can't hear what we're saying. They can't spend time and do deep thinking and deep work. They can't be as creative as we'd like for them to be, as they would like to be if they were fulfilled in their work. We've got to do something to help. And so what's been happening, whether it's mindfulness for teachers or mindfulness for, corporate employees and everything in between, is a real targeted approach to get people started on a pathway of going, I don't have to react blindly to this emotion right now. I don't have to react blindly to this circumstance right now. And you're always going to have people that don't appreciate that and push back on that and go, oh, we're going to sit around and talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
We're going to sit around and do some crafts together. And so I think it's powerful that they're getting started on that.
Yeah, I think I was just joking. I call them the kumbaya sessions. Like, for me, when I've encountered kind of the mindfulness, approaches and tactics from employers, and even just with our sports teams and athletics, I guess two things have come up for me. One is I don't have trouble relaxing too much, turning off the phone, putting away the work, settling down and just taking a deep breath. And so it was nice to get those in the daily activity. I don't know, you've tried the float spa before, right?
Yeah. Last summer I did it a bunch.
Yeah. And I did it as well. And I really enjoyed it. But I also realized, like, it's not hard for me to stop and take a 10-minute nap. And so, I didn't see the need to pay $100 for it. But, and then I guess the second part of the mindfulness thing is, all right, this is great that we're talking about feelings. We're aware of what's happening. We're all taking a deep breath, relaxing. But now what do we do? And like, I guess I always wanted that to turn into some kind of action. You just can't just stop and breathe all day. We still got to move forward. We got to.
Hopefully you breathe all day.
Yeah, I do breathe all day, but we got to move forward. There's activity to do. There's action to take. There's steps to move forward. So now, from what I've learned in mindfulness in these 20-minute mindfulness sessions, now how does that turn to action? Would you say, you've worked with a ton of ambitious people as well from the business standpoint. Would you say there's similar kind of pushback to the idea of just the mindfulness training? And
yeah, absolutely. And meditation too. If I say to a group of people, hey, we're going to meditate right now, immediate walls are going to go up. Immediate walls. And so I would never say that. I would say, hey, do you want to do an exercise together right now? Which, by the way, I know we didn't talk about this. We may want to do that today even. We could do that near the end.
Yeah.
Give people a chance to experience it, but whatever. But yeah, if I say we're going to do a meditation exercise, it's going to be an immediate wall up for some people and an immediate ready to dive in. And the people that are ready to dive in think they know what I'm talking about, but I'm actually not talking about meditation as much as I am contemplation. And so, for me, I'm very careful about saying, hey, let's do an exercise right now. How would that sound? You want to try this out? So that it becomes a different way to engage it. And ambitious people, in a good way, don't just go along with the trendy BS. They can be disagreeable people. And if they're insecure and dysfunctional, they're aggressively disagreeable. But if they're secure and healthy, they're appropriately disagreeable. And they're not going to go with a trend just because it's popular. They want to know this. What's the impact to me, to the people I lead and take care of? I need to see results. If I'm not getting a result, I don't need a placebo effect from this, because they tend to be people who can really focus and harness their mind. I don't need to see the placebo effect from this. I can get that in a lot of different ways. And so, yeah, you do see this really, like, how is this going to make a difference? It's been fun for me to have people actually like test our stuff and say, okay, I'm going to do it, but I want to see what sticks 6 months or a year from now. And then they end up becoming a certified coach, because to the aggression that they want to like challenge things is how they see the transformation. And so, yeah, you know, you got to be careful when you define these terms and what you mean by them, because they can just get people into, you know, convincing themselves of something. And we want to see real transformation.
Yeah. And I think that's what excites me about what we've done with ChampionShift and InsightShift is it is like tangible results, tangible improvement, tangible growth. More than that, it's lasting. Like it's transformational. I think you and I both have dove into every self-help leadership program, resource, book that's ever been put out in existence, and just feeling how the hype would just wear off after a few moments or a few weeks, or you know, it doesn't endure seasons. And I think that's what excites me about what we're doing with ChampionShift, is that it's not hype, and it's not you know, an archetype that you have to fit into to make it work. It's customized training. It's a customized resource to meet you where you're at, where you've been, what you've been through, where you're trying to go. And it can endure all seasons, which has made it super transformational for me. And I know for you as well, which is why we're so excited to share this. One thing that that's become even a bigger thing in the sports world now, with guys like Kevin Love and Kyle Lowry really bringing it to the forefront, which is the awareness of just mental illness and mental health. You know, them coming out and talking about their experiences with depression, anxiety, panic attacks, things of that nature. It's remarkable to hear their stories. And I know them sharing it is giving so much more comfort and encouragement to a lot of people who are probably experiencing similar things. You know, and as I hear their stories, I guess I have two reactions. One is in awe of how they're struggling with these things in such a public platform as the NBA, and still performing at super high levels while battling these things on the inside or the other side. And that's just remarkable to me. I guess the other side of it is, for me, I would say it's maybe a struggle to empathize a little bit, because it's not something I've experienced personally. And also I have a little bit of pride of saying, you know, if I'm in a ditch, I can get myself out of it. And I think a lot of people take that approach. I think, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this, Chris, but you know, I think a lot of people can get themselves out of it, but there's also some times where you just can't, and maybe help with counseling, therapy, medications are important, valuable. But like I said, I'd like to hear your perspective on some of that too, Chris, and what they might be experiencing, and how, you know, is this something I need with more counseling or therapy, or something like ChampionShift can help me advance?
Yeah. Awesome. I love to talk about this because A, we can help people by guiding them where they're going to be best served, but B, because we can affect some real change and, you know, pull back some of the stigma. I will tell you, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud, when I was 21, I was just, you know, as a speaker, full of myself, didn't have my own voice, a lot of proving or hiding, and very immature. And one time I said, while I was speaking, you take a pill to get up and a pill to go down. And it just kind of came out. And my wife, we had just gotten married. So I was probably like 22, 23, something like that. But my wife said something to me afterward, you know, about that. And I never said anything like that again, because I realized, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I feel like that's my 20s. If my 20s were titled with a chapter title, it'd be like, I don't know what I'm talking about. But but I had no idea what I would learn, the next 2 decades really. And a lot of that started like mid to late 20s, just my relationship with people I love that have a different brain chemistry than me. And then in my early 30s, I started reading all I could on psychology and trauma. And I remember reading hundreds of pages on clinical trials of trauma and understanding capital T trauma, lower case T trauma, and the differences there. And oh my gosh, like there are just issues that are real, and we need to distinguish between almost like functioning and thriving. Counseling is great. Psychotherapy is great. Psychology is great. Psychiatry is great because it helps you get a baseline to function well. And if you've never struggled with that, you can't appreciate it. And I really haven't, but I do have close relationships with people that I love so much that when they say things like, I got my life back, like, oh my God, they were really struggling. Where coaching from a performance standpoint is moving from functioning to thriving. Now I'll, often, any number of people we're working with over the course of, the rhythms of how we open up programs, we'll often have people in those programs that are being coached while they see, a certain psychologist, or while they're seeing a psychiatrist, or they may take medicine. On our intake forms, we ask those questions. And we ask those questions because we don't know where they are, but we also want to emphasize, hey, we're not counseling, we're coaching, and those are different structures. But people can appreciate, I can take 6 months to talk through an issue and really have somebody help me through that in a good way as a counselor, or, this is an issue I want to accelerate through in coaching. But, there is a different experience there to be had. And for people that don't have a normal baseline, they may hear some of what we talk about with ChampionShift and be like, those guys are crazy. Is that just forced energy? And likewise, if people are in a place of performance coaching, they may go, they just need to stop being victims. And in my own life, in, really having to start over professionally and financially 3 times, really kind of 4. I have hit some depressive episodes a few times, and I got into some bad habits, and I had to come out of that. And it is so clear to me that it was circumstantial depression that I had to lead my way out of versus chemical depression, which you cannot lead your way out of. Now, I want to say a little bit about brain science, but I've kind of gone on for a minute there. Does that make sense, that distinguishing part? I know we've talked about it before, but.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's really helpful too. I'd like to hear more about the brain science stuff. I'm glad you made that distinction there, like circumstantial depression versus maybe a brain chemistry issue with regards to depression. I think we've all felt those moments where, I just had it this week where I didn't feel like doing anything, and thought I was stuck in the mud. And it's easy to maybe spiral downward and just say, immediately label yourself as have depression, I need medication, I need help, I need therapy, whatever. But I guess I'd like to hear more from you about the brain chemistry stuff, but also, how do we know the difference? When is it circumstantial? And then when is it, okay, I'm just having a tough day, I need to upgrade some mindset stuff and find my traction again.
Yeah. Thank you. I think for all of us, there's tough days and off days, and anybody that says they kill it and crush it all the time, I don't believe them. There's rhythms and seasons. And what you want to pay attention to when it's circumstantial depression is just some kind of period where you're indulging in some kind of numbing out in a consistent way. Circumstantial depression. So, for me, and I don't think I've shared this too much publicly, but one of those devastating blows, and I'm just like laying on the ground bleeding emotionally and mentally, I got into a habit where I took like 2 Benadryl and drank 1 or 2 beers to fall asleep. Terrible habit, especially because Benadryl just like makes me more sad. I like weepy the next day. It's my 17-year-old daughter and I were just talking a couple nights ago, and she didn't realize, some of the stuff that I've had to recover from. And it was a great vulnerable moment where I shared that with her, and what it was like for me to really wake up into what was happening, to stop numbing out and to rebuild some patterns. So you're looking for the systemic numbing out in the circumstantial. In the brain chemistry, it's like and I don't know this from experience. This is from talking to lots of people. They'll use things like, it starts to come and you feel it and there's just nothing you can do to stop it. And you're in this dark hole. And now all of these are labels, but whether it's depression or OCD behavior and thinking, where the repetition just won't stop. You've got to go through what almost looks superstitious to people to get a peace of mind, or anxiety, generalized anxiety attacks, depression, OCD, anxiety attacks. These are things that a lot of people struggle with. Now you get to, histrionic personality disorder and some of that stuff. And that's more, extreme, where, again, all of these are labels. I'm just talking more about, the part of the general population that struggles with a brain chemistry issue. And those are labels that we've given to really explain our differences. Throughout human evolution, if you had a tribe of 150 people, 130 of them may have had, some, and I don't know the exact numbers here, but may have had some kind of normal functioning. And I don't like the word normal, because it betrays the point I'm about to make. But they had some kind of functioning where, their serotonin was being produced in a consistent way. Their gut, because about 90% of your brain's in your gut, was cooperating with their emotions and their neural synapses and all these processes, so that, they had the ability to take a stance of what we would call now, today's world, positivity. But throughout human history, you've really had space for a portion of the tribe to be different, not worse, not abnormal, just different processing. And we made space for that, right? Just different functioning and processing, less serotonin. Now, and I say now, in like the last couple hundred years, we've classified, labeled that and said, okay, there's something wrong with you and you're going over here. Well, now the last 4 or 5 years, we've said, no, it's mental health. And this is an important value and we need to pay attention to this. And if anyone out there disregards how important mental health is, especially for people with a brain chemistry disposition to have suboptimal mental processing, they just don't have a lot of relationships with people that are real and vulnerable, because a certain percentage of the population has, this kind of impact. Now, I think also too, on top of that, modern living doesn't allow for healthy emotional functioning and processing. So we get all of this baggage, and that's where we can do a lot to kind of get them unblocked. Yeah. But yeah, the caution would be, you can't disregard this. And as you know, the vulnerability with which some of the NBA players have spoke out and said, this is real and I'm suffering. And it's not going to be fixed by telling myself it'll just get better. Yeah. I'm just curious to hear for you, because I know that you've also come to appreciate this too. What's been some of the emotional turning points that you've gone, yeah, this is real. This is not just a matter of discipline or willpower.
Yeah, I think, hearing the stories of those guys is incredible and encouraging. I think there's still, there's probably still a stigma attached to it, which you just kind of described in your timeline that you laid out. But I think what's encouraging is that it's starting to break down, and not only are what I said at the beginning, like these guys are sharing their struggles with it, but to see they also performed at really high levels while struggling with it. And to see that, maybe you do need to get some help. You're not broken. You can still perform at high levels. You can still be an all-star. You can be at the top of your craft. You're not broken. I think there is a place for you. And that's really encouraging. I hope what's happening is through this dialogue and conversation that we're giving hope to and encouragement to two groups of people. The group that says, man, I think I really need help, and you can do it. You can go get help. It will help, and you can still perform at crazy high level, at all-star levels in that. But also giving encouragement and hope to a group of people that say, like, I don't need to, to not to make light of it, but sit on the couch and go through therapy. Like, I don't have those issues, but I do want to work on my mindset, my mental skills. I think they're important, but I don't need a counselor, so to speak. And I think so. Hopefully, hope and encouragement for those people that here's a resource that can help you. It's not counseling, and you still need to work on your mental skills and your mental game and sharpening your mind and mental health and taking care of yourself that way. And so you can do that as well. I hope there's value for both groups.
That's awesome. Can I add something to that just
please.
hit my heart and mind so strong?
Yeah.
In software, they have this terminology. It's a feature, not a bug, and that is exactly what I've experienced in my own life when I've had to crawl out of circumstantial holes. But in walking through brain chemistry transformations with people, whether it's people we've coached or people that I'm close to and love, it's a feature, not a bug. It's like there's just more canyons in them, which means there's more that can flow through them.
Yeah. That
there's an acute sensitivity to all of the things that we tend to skip over. One of the readings for me, areas of reading that's been super interesting the last 6 to 9 months has been the type of person who experiences and feels more. And we know at the quantum physics level that, we're all connected, that quantum entanglement is a real thing. And it is truly wild to read about people who are just dialed in at another level of sensitivity that experience things that are hard for people to understand, that are more or less sensitive to that, almost more divorced from their bodies and emotions. And so, yeah, it's not a bug, it's a feature, and their openness and expansiveness invites me to be more present in my emotions and my body and to use them, to harness them, to grow from them. And that's a really powerful thing, Now, I do think there's an intelligence, an emotional intelligence that happens at some point where you go, okay, because it's a feature, not a bug, I want to live with deep awareness of it and protect myself. Or the feature becomes a bug because you start carrying too much. And so, especially for people that have that wiring and disposition, it's hard for them to know the difference between someone else's anxiety and their anxiety because they're picking all that up. When I've been oblivious, right? My wife can carry somebody's, and I'll say, is that your anxiety or theirs? Oh my God. Yeah. She's super tuned in. And then she's telling me, did you notice? And I'm like, notice? No, I was telling a story. I was really excited. That's all I felt. I have learned to be better than that a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, it's a feature, not a bug.
I love the way you frame that. Just from what we said at the beginning, how these things are supplemental to what we teach with ChampionShift. And, the mindfulness is a start, but putting it into action, how do we take meditation, awareness, but move it into contemplation, but also move it into action? How do we take, your awareness of these features and turn them into strengths? How do we flip that into advantages? And it's a lot we talk about in ChampionShift, and the next resource we're coming out with, we spent a couple of weeks on that. It's just flipping obstacles into opportunities, disadvantages into advantages. And so we're excited to share more about that. Chris, I would love if you would be open to it, is as you alluded to earlier, maybe just leading us through the identity space, the meditation experience that we help people with, exercise that we help people with, that turns mindfulness into action and maybe gives you a more customized and transformational experience with mindfulness and meditation.
I'd love to. That'd be awesome, dude. It's funny because I know we didn't talk about it, but props to you to bring it back around, because I was like, we could. I just have to express something, or I feel like I'll just explode. Just how excited I am for our third session to make that announcement. You were just hinting at. It's going to be so much fun.
So fun.
Whew. So we got to wait a month to tell people? No. So yeah, for people that want to participate in an exercise, we'll just make space for that now. And very normal for me to lead people through an experience like this. I know for you too, but I'm just going to invite everybody participating right now or that watches this later to get comfortable in your seat and just take a moment. And as you get comfortable in your seat, to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just feeling the weight of gravity start to pull at your body. Adjust yourself if you need to relax into that comfort. Feeling your feet on the floor. And as you keep your eyes closed, taking a breath in, holding, pressing that breath out. And then with your eyes closed, allowing your imagination to just guide you, stepping into an image that feels peaceful, stepping into a scene where you feel loved, where everything is okay. This may be a place you've been before, and your mind is taking you back there, a place that's real, a place that's imaginary, a place you're just making up right now. That's fine too. There is no right way or wrong way. There's just your way. And whether it's first person and you're seeing it all, or it's third person and you're seeing yourself, or it switches, I want you to just look around and notice the scene. And if you're having trouble being in a scene or a picture, just like you would scroll through photos on your phone, just pick a place that feels peaceful and just step into it. Keeping your eyes closed as you look around, I want you to look at what you see. Notice a detail just with some vivid clarity. It could be a nature scene. It could be anything that's there. Look around and just notice. And then, what are the sounds that you hear in this space? If it's inside, it's crackling fire, the rocking chair, outdoors, the wind, whatever it is, I want you to pick one of those sounds. To show you how dynamic this can be while you keep your eyes closed, turn the sound up some. Not that it hurts your ears, but that it just surrounds you. And then what does the atmosphere of this space feel like on your skin? Is it cool? Is it warm? And what's the emotion you feel in this space? And if you were to take that emotion and just write it on something around you, carve it into a tree, use a stick to write it into sand, maybe there's a pad of paper. Just imagine it. What would you write on that pad of paper without thinking or analyzing for what this space is to you? And I want you to look at that word or that phrase or that message and just imagine taking it into your body. Keeping your eyes closed, seeing you just bring that message into yourself, that this is who you are. And because this is your identity space, you don't have to prove or hide anything. You don't have to live for anyone else. You don't have to fear anything. What would you want to go do as an adventure? The laws of physics don't apply. Seconds can pass here, hours can pass there. But in freedom, how would you go play? Go play. I'll be quiet for a moment and end this experience. 3, 2, 1. And people can pause that there and stay in that space longer if they want. But that's what we call our identity space exercise, as you know, Brett. And, you know, I was practicing this morning.
It's so, when you practice it, when you spend time there, it's amazing how valuable it can be. And we talked a little bit earlier about circumstantial depression, and when you have your bad days, how do we get out of them? Talked about mindfulness of like being aware of what's happening to you and in you. And I know from personal experience, just practicing identity space, knowing what it feels like to be in a spot where everything's right, everything's fine, and you're taken care of. There's no expectations, no pressure, no obligations. To know what it feels like to be whole, to just delight in being you, and to be able to be in that space daily sets you up to know when maybe you've been knocked off balance. Maybe I am experiencing some circumstantial depression, and then start, which is what we help people with in our coaching program, but start untangling that and understanding why and what happened and what led you astray, how to get back on track. I know we're running short on time, but a quick story about using identity space to recover on the fly. It was like 4 years ago. I was an assistant coach in the G League, and our head coach was very adamant about developing the staff as much as we developed the players. And so I thought the next step of growth for me was going to be a head coach in the G League, and he agreed. And so the last game of the season, he set us up for me to coach the first half of the game. So he would sit on the bench, be an assistant. I would be the head coach, call timeouts, make subs, call plays, yell at the refs, all this stuff. And I remember about 3 minutes before we were leaving the locker room, and just feeling this, feeling this pit in my stomach locking up, and just wanting to call the whole thing off, and feeling the nervousness about stepping into the spotlight and not feeling like I deserved it or was worthy of that experience. And so just wanting to escape. And so I found a corner of the locker room where I wouldn't be bothered, went right here to identity space, and learned how to give myself exactly what I needed. Like, the fear I was feeling was not legitimate fear. It was a fear of shame, of not seeing myself worthy of that moment. So being able to go to the identity space, acknowledge those feelings, but then also flip them into positives to say, you are worthy of this moment. Like, own the spotlight, not for me to promote myself, but to lead the team and give the team what they needed. And it put me in a mind state and a mindset to go out there and coach with full courage and boldness, and lead the group. And so, just to add that personal experience onto that exercise we did, and how tying a bow around all of this is moving mindfulness, moving counseling and therapy, moving maybe medications into action, into forward momentum, and into growth. So powerful tools that I know you've helped yourself with, Chris, and helped a lot of people with, and now we're excited to help even more with.
Right on. I'm so glad you added that story, because it shows the power of everything we're about, that there's nothing more powerful than a relaxed and harnessed mind.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be people that swing to either extreme of that. How can I harness my mind? How can I get activated? How can I bring myself peace and relax? And you can even look at personality groupings. There are some people that drink coffee because they need to get activated. But because alcohol is a depressant, it's very dangerous for them. And then there are people who get very activated and don't need as much coffee, but because they're so activated, alcohol helps. To use two popular substances, probably, I would guess, in the first world, the two most popular substances that are used to try to achieve this state, and of course we value both. which is why I like to drink alcohol and coffee. We value the relaxed and the harnessed mind, that you're going into this identity space, not to escape, but to relax. And as you relax, you harness what's happening in you to engage. You're not escaping, you're engaging into the roles and the mission and the community and the relationships, not dominated by the emotional state, not denying it either, harnessing it. I'm aware and learning. And so that's what's so cool about your story, is because it puts, a really clear, vivid illustration to this exercise that we just did, and how you can use it not only for continual training, like, what I was talking about this morning, but in the moment training with your story. And when you're in the moment training, I mean, to be in an engagement with a performance, necessity, requirement, opportunity, whatever it is, and to know, my identity isn't on the line. I haven't found a more liberating thought. I haven't found a more life-changing thought, and still obsessed with it, these years later. And so thanks for telling that story.
Man, I feel like we could talk for like 8 more hours about all this stuff. So much more to say. It just makes me excited about the future of ChampionShift and what we're going to offer and help people with, and makes me excited about the growth of athletes and coaches in this competitive athletic world, which I know you're excited about, the cross application into athletes, but also the application into the competitive business world and the competitive world we live with at home, and how this can transform our lives. So thank you, Chris. Thanks for being here. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and for sure join us for part 3. Big news I better hang up before I spill all the beans in this one. I'm so excited to share it. So looking forward to getting back together again in a few weeks.
Awesome. It's such a privilege to be here. Peace out, everybody.
Later.